Back. Okay. There we are. Do you see we're live?
I see it.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live stream here on the Bow Wow Bill page, YouTube channel. We're streaming live on X as well, formerly known as Twitter. And I have I'm so excited, you guys. I have the GOAT. Have you ever been called the GOAT, Michael?
Yeah. I humbly disagree, probably, but it's kind to have people to use that term in relation to you. So
yeah, you are, man, and I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate the way that you understand and break down the nuances of dog training, and it's brought my understanding to definitely the next level and made me approach situations differently. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's incredible. You're very welcome.
I am going to share this, and anybody that's watching this, it takes a while for people to trickle in here. But if you're watching this after the fact, make sure you share this. And while I share this on my personal page, you want to give people a quick introduction of who you are and where you're at and what you're all about.
You talking to me or them?
You.
Sure, no problem. I'm Michael Ellis. I run a school for dog trainers. I've run a school for dog trainers for the last 16 years. I've been dog training for a little over 40 years. It was a hobby as a child, a serious hobby as a teenager, and then turned professional in my 20s. Initially primarily giving seminars to dog training clubs and professional training organizations, police departments, sport clubs, service dog organizations, stuff like that. So I traveled for almost 15 years, giving training seminars full time. And then I opened the school for trainers. And for the last 16 years, I've run a school for dog trainers. And now I'm sort of at the inflection point. I'm 60 this year, so I'm cutting back to part-time-ish. So I'm doing a little bit less. I started an online membership service, and I'm doing a little bit less of in-person stuff. We ran a kind of full-time 5-month-long trainers program for 15 years. So we just retired that last year, and now I'm doing most of the stuff online and some limited kind of teaching there.
Yeah, and you just did a sit, stay, learn course I saw too.
Yeah. Nick's been talking to me for a number of years, going like, "Hey, you should put something on our platform, reach a different audience." And that's kind of one of the things that I am right now. I'm trying to just get good dog training information in front of as many people as possible, right? And so I think over the years, I have a reputation amongst dog trainers, professional trainers and things, and sport trainers kind of know who I am. But sometimes the general public doesn't find you necessarily. And I don't do a lot of advertising and things like that. It's been kind of mostly word of mouth for my career. And so Nick's platform kind of reaches a slightly different audience than I would normally talk to. So I agreed that it was a good idea. And we just launched it a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
Excellent. So what was your first dog?
My first dog was a German Shepherd. Well, my parents had miniature schnauzers when I was a little kid, but my first personal dog, I was bugging him to get a dog, was a German Shepherd, and I was 12. I wanted a Doberman really badly, but my mom wouldn't agree to the Doberman, but let me get a German Shepherd. And I got a pet store German Shepherd, and the deal was that I had to train the dog if I got a dog. So I took an obedience class from the local German Shepherd dog club, and that sent me off the cliff. From that point on, I was all in. I got into conformation shows and AKC obedience, and I volunteered, used to kennel sit for an old couple that had a kennel and bred German Shepherds in San Diego. So yeah, it was a love at first dipped my toe in the water. I was really into dog training right off the bat. Yeah, so
love it first bark, I guess. I don't know.
Love it first bark, yeah.
So were your parents dog people? They had the schnauzers?
No, not at all. I mean, they liked dogs, like animals, all that kind of stuff. But like many people, they just had a dog because you have a dog, right? And they liked the idea of having everybody in our family, all my relatives and stuff, always had dogs, but none of them were really trainers. They, typical to many companion dog owners, they just have a dog that's there, and if the dog doesn't cause too much trouble, that's about the extent of the training, right?
Right. And that's what typically the majority I find of pet dog trainer, or excuse me, pet dog people that have a pet in the family, they just want a cool dog, man. They just want a dog to exist. And so it's important to remember that as professional trainers, we are passionate about this, but not everybody is on the same level. And I just have to remind people, like, look, it's your dog. You can do it. You can listen to me, but it's also important to know, how do we get that dog stabilized? How do we get that dog to be that experience that they signed up for when they purchased this animal? And not to go so deep into terminology, into expectations, all that stuff with your pet dog people.
Absolutely. I think you and I were chatting a little bit before this started, and for me, a little bit of it is matching the right dog with the right person, right? So one of the things is that when people get companion dog owners get a dog, sometimes they get a dog based on an idea of what they think a dog is. They like the way this dog looks, or they were kids and a relative had a dog like this, or they had a dog like this, and they always wanted it. And if you get the right dog, then they don't have to be dog trainers in order to be successful and have a fulfilling relationship. If you get the wrong dog, then suddenly the training stuff becomes a lot more important, right? So, or a dog that's maybe not perfectly suitable for your lifestyle. And I find that's the trick a lot. A lot of people are kind of forced into a relationship and a way of being with dogs that wasn't what they really signed up for, because they didn't make the right choice in the beginning. They got the wrong dog for their situation. And there are some dogs that are going to require a lot more from you than others are. And that's just the reality of it, unfortunately.
Yeah. And actually doing so many of these conversations, I found a lot of people that have actually gotten into the industry because they've gotten a dog like that.
So many.
Kind of, yeah.
You're spot
yeah. And then they're like, well, I'm a dog trainer now, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I guarantee you pull all the professional dog trainers out there, and probably, a third or a half of them got into the industry because they had a problem dog themselves. You're absolutely right. That's a common path into the community.
Yeah, well, and they find that. Oh, thank you. I got my coffee being delivered here by my beautiful wife. Thank you, darling. And they find that, they get a problem dog, and then they go hire a trainer, multiple trainers sometimes, and these trainers can't help them with the situation, or they're telling them they're doing it wrong, or and sometimes they'll actually tell them to euthanize this dog, and they love the dog, and they've established this relationship, and so then they go and look, and they find effective techniques, effective ways to view this relationship, and then I've actually heard them go back to the trainers and be like, "Hey, look, this is what I did, and it worked," and then they're villainized for that. And I think that's just such an interesting dynamic of, like, no, this is the truth. The dog is performing, or not necessarily fixed, but the relationship has gotten much better. And now I see that that there's a disconnect with some of the philosophies, and it's just an interesting thing, man. This interspecies communication,
Oh, we could talk about it endlessly, but I think the thing that's challenging with companion dogs is that everyone has kind of a different idea of what they want their relationship with their dog to be, and people have different levels of physical skill, mental awareness, different abilities, and different goals and desires and time to give to the whole thing. So when you're helping other people train dogs, it's easy as a dog trainer to get frustrated when you give advice to someone and they don't follow the advice, or maybe they're unable to execute it, and you feel frustrated by that. And that can be hard too. There's something here, we're dealing with something we're passionate about, we love, and then when you watch people kind of not follow through and things like that can eat at you. So there's the dog trainer's perspective, how they get burned out and a little frustrated with the process. But you always have to remember, what we're doing here is trying to help somebody else make a relationship. We're teachers. And so our goal is to give them the tools, and they are going to be the one that has to find how much of this and how much of that and how much time and what kind of relationship can they forge with their dog. And our ultimate job, if you're professional trainer one-on-one with the companion dog owners, is to help them navigate those waters. And so us getting frustrated, us feeling blows to our ego because somebody went off and didn't do what we said and they're happy with the results and all that kind of stuff. That stuff we all have to let go of if you're going to be good at this job, right? If you're going to be good at helping other dogs, you got to let go of all that stuff and remember what the mission is underneath it all. Better lives for people and dogs, right?
Yeah. And one of the things that I used to ask is, what do you say to somebody who's gotten into dog training because they don't like people?
Yeah, I say you got into the wrong profession. Right? So there are a few dog training jobs out there where you just get to train dogs and you don't actually have to deal with people, but they're very few and far between. And most of what you're doing as a professional in the dog training industry is teaching and coaching and helping other people be better and motivating people too, right? That's another big part of your thing. Like people say, well, I don't like to work with companion dog owners because they won't do the work. Well, your job is to motivate them to do the work, right? The same way that we build motivation in dogs, the same way that we break things down in small pieces to help them understand. We build situations in which they can get some early success so they become more persistent. All the things that we do there, we have to do with people. And if you don't like interacting with people and don't doing that, this is going to be a hard job for you. Because you do more of that than the dog training is a little bit the easy part in a sense. That's the part that if you devote yourself to it, you can learn the craft of dog training and you could go in and do stuff with dogs and feel confident in that. But that's not your job. Your job is to help them be able to do it. And that's a different skill set. You're a teacher, ultimately, a teacher of people.
Well, and connecting and being able to communicate this in a variety of analogies and where this particular person can get it, right? And I've been in situations where I've used an analogy for the husband and I've used a different analogy for the wife to express the same thought with why we're doing this. And the why is our power behind what we do.
I think so. I mean, I think it's helpful for people to kind of understand the underpinnings. I think dog training has two levels to it. There's just the kind of mechanical understanding of how to move and timing and physical skill, because you're communicating with another species. So you cannot sit down and explain it to them verbally. So you have to show them. So there's a physical aspects to showing them, and people have to learn that. And sometimes too much why can get in the way of that half of it. Like, get out of your head, just learn how to hold a leash, learn how to move, learn what you're looking for, all those things. But the other half of that is, of course, the troubleshooting and the problem solving and why something works and why it doesn't work. And then you have to know the why. So both of those things have to happen. It's how much of which bucket you're using at which stage of the teaching process. And so for me, a lot in the beginning, I give them a little bit of why, because you need to get them on board. Like, this is why this is going to work. This is what we're doing. So you have an idea of where we're going. So you don't feel like you're just flailing around in the dark. But don't worry too much about that right now. Let's worry about, here's how you hold a leash. Here's how you deliver a reward. Here's how you move. This is what a dog looks like when they're doing it right. This is what they look like when they're doing it. All that little stuff. And then as they start to gain some physical mastery of the skills that are necessary, you can add more layers of depth to it. But you can't give them everything all at once, right? And that's the hard part, right? As a teacher, your job is to go like, okay, where do I need to meet this person? And how much of an information dump can I give on them at once without it negatively impacting their progress, right? So
overwhelming them with information. And same thing that we can do with these dogs, right? It's like focus on the first part of this. And the first part of it is I tell people, like, look, the dog can pay attention to you with his ears, his nose, or his eyes, and guess what I want? Like when I do a heel, or when I'm walking the dog, like, I'm not wanting that dog to be a robot. Like, I want the dog to experience the world. It's
Yeah,
like, I'm not talking like focus heel. I just want to glance. Like, look at, okay, we're checking in. We're establishing this type of relationship where it's nuances and explaining that. And the other thing that I have to do too is celebrate, like, even the small victories. Like, that's important to me, especially with my companion dog clients. Is like, look, man, you're making progress. Like, this is getting better, even though you're not where you want to be at the peak of the
right.
mountain here. We're still making progress. We're walking along the trail here, and good job, keep it up.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you remember um, when you were young and you were like, I want to do this?
So my story is a little weird on this front in that I didn't really choose to be a dog trainer, meaning to do it as a profession. Like, so there wasn't one inflection point where I said, okay, I want this to be my career, and I'm going to start doing this as a career. It was a hobby. I had no intention of being a professional dog trainer. I loved doing it from the time I was a kid. I got really involved in all that stuff, and I can imagine myself, winning dog shows or winning sporting events with dogs, manifesting all that in my head. But I looked at a career. I have a degree in biogeography. I was intending to be in resource planning and that kind of stuff, like ecology, and it was my world. And the dog training thing was always just a kind of passionate hobby for me. Um,
Hmm.
and I started doing seminars because the club that I used to work with had a bunch of new people and asked if I'd do a little clinic for them. And I taught some classes for money on the side at the local pet store and things like that to make ends meet while I was in school. Um, but I did a seminar and it went well, and somebody else asked me to do a seminar and it went well. And it just kind of picked up steam a little bit at a time. But still, I was planning to go to graduate school and all that kind of stuff. And so it just got busier and busier and busier until a point where I was like, well, I guess this is my job now. I guess I'm going to do like,
You just woke up one day, you're like, oh my goodness, I'm a dog trainer.
yeah, to that point at which that I switched, then I started to think about it a little differently. I said, well, I can't travel forever, so maybe I'll open a school. Should I open a dog training school, or should I, because I've been traveling for 10 years coaching other dog trainers, maybe I should start a school for dog trainers? And so I came into it differently than a lot of people do, in that and there are good things and bad things about that. Like, the good things to me is that I didn't put any pressure on myself in the beginning to do something ahead of when I was ready to do it. I just I went to lots of seminars. I trained at different clubs. We visited lots of people. I got to know trainers. I learned techniques. I got to try them out on my own and see what I liked and didn't like, and what I felt worked and didn't work. But there was no pressure. Nobody was paying me up front, where there's a pressure to produce results and all that kind of stuff. So I could move through the learning process myself at a pace that was kind of organic, not forced. And I think some trainers now, when they're starting out, they want to be good really fast. They want to do this professionally. They want to become expert. And so they put a lot of pressure on themselves to move really quickly through the learning process. And that they shortcut some of the hands-on experience, and they put themselves in kind of uncomfortable positions because now it's your job. And so you have to know what you're doing, and they may bite off more than they can chew sometimes. And that can be a rough way through. Right. And so, and sometimes, and I've talked about this a lot on other podcasts and things like that, but I think sometimes people can put the business side of it ahead of their craft in the beginning. There's a point at which the business end of things are important. It's a job. At the end of the day, it's like any other career that you choose. There are aspects of it that are related to good business and good marketing and all the rest of that stuff. Just make sure you're focused on your craft first, right? And so and I had the luxury of doing that just because I wasn't looking to make it a job in the very beginning. So that I think that was good. It took me a lot longer that way, though, of course, right? So I'm happy with where I am at this stage of my life, but it made that process a longer process for me than somebody that said, hey, I want to do this as a job. I'm going to start getting out there and marketing myself and that kind of thing. And I also had an opportunity to put my hands on a lot of dogs in a way, because of this, me traveling and doing seminars a lot, that I got lots of different people and lots of dogs in front of me every week, right? And most beginning trainers, that's where they struggle to start. You get some experience, you get some skills. Now you need to meet new dogs and new people on a really regular basis. So getting the hands-on experience is the hardest thing for young trainers now.
Yeah, and you know what? There's no substitution for that time. I mean, we belong to a world of instant gratification where we have all these devices on us here, and where we have access to information now with AI and all this stuff, where it's moving at a pretty exponential pace, but it doesn't work that way with applying knowledge. And we got to remember too, the word expert is also rooted, the root of that is also in experience. So we have expert comes from experience. And often I see trainers making this mistake where they're going to one school after another, and I tell them, like, look, there's a 3-part process when we're learning from others. It's the preparation for the school or whatever you're doing. There's the actual experience, but there's the processing and application afterwards. And that's where that time comes in, and we can't go around it. We can't go under or over it. We have to go through it.
Yes, agreed. And I think you hit on that. That is very well said. And I agree that in this world now, we have access to more information than at any point in history, right? You can just jump on your phone and have access to tons of information immediately. You can have access to videos of the top trainers in the world doing their thing, like, immediately. So you get to see and be exposed to ideas almost instantaneously. But that doesn't mean you've incorporated them into your way of thinking or way of doing, right? And there's a difference between me saying, like, oh, I've heard this or I've seen this, and using that as a way of giving advice, versus I've done this 30 times. I know what it feels like in my bones, kind of thing. And there's a different kind. There's a kind of a theoretical knowledge. Like, somebody may give you an answer that's not wrong, but they may not have personal experience with it. And the personal experience part is the part you just can't shortcut. You can definitely shortcut access to the other stuff. You can get there now faster than ever before, but you're still going to have to go through it, bump up against all the mistakes, and find out how it feels, find out how it works with different dogs, find how it works for different people with different skill sets. All that kind of real deep knowledge just comes with repetition and time.
Yeah, and the knowledge through experience, gnosis, right?
Yeah.
Whole different ball of wax than reading about something, watching it on YouTube, and that's the hard part, actually, is because you're going to make mistakes. And it reminds me of, I'm a glass artist, so I have a glass studio here. Oh, cool. And you can watch all these, old experts from Murano, Italy, and just because you watch it doesn't mean that I can go recreate exactly what they just made from years and years of knowledge. And one of the experts said something to me that I'll always remember, and it pertains to dog training, is that it doesn't matter what, or it's not important what you can create. It's what you do when things go wrong. That's important.
Sure. Yeah, the mistakes are are your biggest teachers. And in all of that too, it could seem frustrating or maybe even daunting to a new trainer to think that way. If you say, hey, it's going to take you 10 years, 20 years, whatever, all this time to really become expert at this, that's just the way it is. That could be defeating to some people, but the important thing is you don't look at it that way, because the journey is really fascinating and fun and absorbing. And like anything that's worthwhile, you have to work at it. Like, how proud of your accomplishments would you be if if they were nothing? They were no work for you. They were easy. You just did it. Just who you were made you rich and famous. Like none of that stuff has any kind of gratification. So it is the fact that the process takes time and effort, and there's difficulties and there's failures along the way, and things go wrong and all that kind of stuff that make the eventual kind of acquisition of expertness, for want of a better term, to be so satisfying. It feels so good, and the journey along the way is fun. Like it's interesting and all that. Like it's like wanting to be somewhere with skipping all the steps to getting there. So don't
Yeah.
For trainers out there that are in process that may find that like that defeating or daunting, don't enjoy it. Enjoy the ride. It's a really cool and endlessly fascinating discipline. Like it's just,
Yeah.
you'll never be bored. There's always something
Well,
new to learn. No matter how good you are, there's always ways to get better. And no matter how good you are, there's somebody else out there that's going to do it better than you. That's just the way it is. So enjoy the little things along the way.
it's not the destination. I mean, there are destinations that we can celebrate, and I see
Yes.
comments popping up. And if you guys have any comments, I'll get to the comment section and ask any questions that you have. So put those in there, and we'll get to them here in a little bit. But one thing that you said is endless, right? There is no finish line here. We have to remember, even as are you still learning, Michael?
Oh my God. Yeah. All the time. Every single time. Yep. Yep. Always. Yep. You're never done. Never done. And what happens too is a fascinating thing is you may revisit techniques and ideas and things that you discarded as an early part of your career. Like it's not a linear evolution either. It's not like it just gets better and we toss away the old stuff. And like there's techniques and things that kind of go through phases based on, oops, I'm playing. Wave my arms around because it talks to my camera.
It focused on something over there. I don't know. Is that, are you on a Mac or something?
No, I have this cool little camera that, come here, you stupid thing. That
but
bring me. Come on.
We'll fix it. You'll figure it out. This is one thing that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, it has a feature where if you wave your hands, which I wave my hands endlessly. Right?
Now there you go. Coming. It's almost there.
There we are.
a little bit more to the left, I believe, for you. Right for me. You're on this side of. There it goes. Okay.
There we are.
Yeah. Talking.
One thing I have a lot to learn about technology. Right? So.
Yeah, no kidding. Me too, man. Yeah, it starts to, and these cameras have a mind of their own, man. Like it's
one of those auto follow feature things. So I think what happened, I waved my arms around and then it started following my hands. It's like, oh, hey, where are you going? You're getting up and moving.
It has a brain. One of the first places that I saw you was Leerburg, of course. Mm-hmm. And how did you meet Ed? And Ed Frawley is the founder of Leerburg to catch people up to speed. And
so actually, I met Ed through his wife Cindy Rhodes, who was a very good dog trainer and a sport dog trainer before she got together with Ed, and then they were together. And I was doing a seminar in Minnesota, and Cindy showed up at the seminar, and we kind of hit it off. And she went back and told Ed that he should come see a seminar. So he showed up at a seminar and enjoyed it. And he said, hey, you want to do videos? And at the time I was traveling full time, like 40 weeks a year to give seminars. I was doing between 35 and 45 seminars a year. So I was really super busy. And so I'd been thinking about doing videos, but I didn't have time to stop and edit them. And the whole rest of the thing, it just wasn't on my radar. And so he said, no problem. I'll just come to seminars and I'll film at seminars and I'll edit them and things like that. And so the original videos I did for him were basically like seminar videos, meaning I was out there just giving a seminar and he filmed it and then went back and tossed stuff together. That's why some of them are so long. Like they didn't necessarily get edited up into small bits. And so then, and over the years, later I produced some videos for it where I scripted them and we shot them kind of in a more traditional format and that kind of thing. And so for 10 years or so, I made videos in collaboration with them. And so I was running the school on the side full time. And then the videos for sales were going through Leerburg, and we became friends during all of that. Yeah. And
When
then a
did you
couple,
start? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
and then in recent years, we have kind of different business plans, and so we've kind of gone in different directions. So I haven't done anything new for Leerburg since before the pandemic, right? So maybe 2016, 2017 was the last kind of new content that I produced for them. And I'm doing most of my stuff now through a membership service that I do. That's where all my new content's going, kind of thing. But we're still friends. They're good folks, but I'm not really working with them much anymore.
Well, it's cool to see, and I've been in this industry. I mean, I started professionally in 2007, but I was working with dogs as a young kid as well. So we have a lot of similarities, and it's cool to see the evolution of this. And people don't realize how hard life on the road is. You know, and I think that, did you see a different possibility with repurposing? You're like, oh, like I'm doing these seminars. I'm traveling pretty much 40. I mean, there's 52 weeks in a year, and you have 48 seminars. So I mean, you're a month without doing seminars. That's got to be rough, dude.
Yeah, it was brutal. It was in the beginning. It was super fun. Like, you're excited. I'm like, look at this. I get to fly around and go train dogs every weekend, right? In a different place. And the people are wonderful, and you get to meet a lot of different dogs and all that kind of stuff. So it's a great laboratory for kind of refining your teaching. I'd have a different group of people in front of me every week to practice teaching techniques and all that kind of stuff on. So it was great, but it is a little grueling. You know, I'd fly out on a Wednesday or a Thursday. I'd do a Friday, Saturday, Sunday seminar. I'd fly home on a Monday. I'd fly out again on a Wednesday. And so the travel part gets old, right? For sure. And so by the end of it, I still enjoyed the teaching part of it and the dog part of it. I was done with flying around and being away from home, you know? So the opening of the trainer school was in direct response to that. I'm like, how do I do the same thing I was basically doing without having to get on a plane every week and go do it? So it's exhausting, but it also was, I can't say that. I mean, it's the biggest educational experience of my life, for sure. That period of time allowed me to really hone my skills and progress in a way that a lot of people don't get access to that much teaching opportunity and different dogs in that context. So it was great.
When did you start the school?
In 2009.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Way back then. Okay.
School opened in 2009. Yeah.
And then when you started the school, what were some of you wanted to repurpose what you were teaching. Were you primarily working with just working dogs, or were you wanting to school?
No, it was a deliberate choice on my part to make sure that the material covered principles of dog training, right? So for me, I'm a big, I'm not a big systems guy. I won't say hey, you do this and this and this, and this is my system. This is the way I do things. I think if people kind of understand the fundamentals of learning and how you manipulate big categories of things in dog training, this is how you manipulate motivation. If you need more motivation, here's some techniques for more motivation. If you need to tone it down a little bit, here's ways of toning it down. And I basically look at larger concepts a lot. And so when I designed the program, I designed it around concepts, and then tried to educate the students that you would just adjust the principles based on your goals. And so you do this, the same principles apply from a pet dog to a sport dog or a working dog, right?
Yes.
Just more of this, less of this, more of an emphasis on stability here, more of an emphasis on motivation here, more of an emphasis on precision here, more of an emphasis on reliability here, whatever that is, right? And I can mix and match. And if you understand how the mechanisms work, then you can make those adjustments. So when I started the school, that was my goal. And the classes were all week and 2 week long classes that were focused on concepts, motivation, management, obedience principles, like e-collar work or whatever. And I broke each of those off, and I just kept adding classes over the years. But there were initially about 8 or 10 classes that I taught that were all geared around fundamentals, and people could come and take them all, or they could take one class at a time as it suited their schedule. And then after I was doing it for a year, I had an option for people to take the classes modularly. You could take a week-long or a 2-week-long class, or you could take our whole program. And the whole program was like 5 months long, full time.
How did you decide on that length of time for people?
It started out, I took all the classes that we offered and I lined them all up back to back and said, this is the program. Plus I added in some additional add-ons for the people that were going to take the long program. And when we started, it was like 15 weeks. And then over the course of the years that I ran the program, I just kept adding stuff to it. Right. So we need a module on this. We need a module on that. And so by the time the last 5 years, I think, that I ran the immersion program, we called it the immersion program, our long program. It was 5 months long. So it's basically full time for 5 months. Yeah.
When we were speaking earlier about the processing, how do you ensure that the students are retaining and processing the information that you're presenting?
So there were core skills that they would get tested on. So there were written exams for students. Basically, everybody, you had opportunities to retake these exams and all that kind of stuff. It was just basically making sure the information was getting through. And I look at exams not as a measure of the student's skill or aptitude, more as a guide for me as a teacher to see if they're actually processing the information I'm giving them. And so we had tests that were geared towards, like, hey, are you getting these concepts? And then we had a practical checkoff list of basic practical skills that by the end of the program, you had to be checked off on. You had to show that you were able to execute them properly. And so that was my way of kind of keeping track of how I needed to make adjustments to make sure that they were getting it. But there's loads of information that's covered in a program like that no way the students retained it all. It was Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 every day, and frequently with additional things happening on the weekends. And I gave them a lot of information. I made sure that they walked away with a certain core set of skills that I said, okay, you guys understand these principles, but there was loads of peripheral stuff that I'm sure they don't remember afterwards.
Well, I think that's important why you're putting it online, because I tell people repetition is the mother of learning. And so when we can revisit the module again, we're going to glean knowledge that we didn't hear from when we first took it.
And that happens all the time. Like, Ian, in my career, it's happened endlessly. Like, you think of at certain points in my development, I've been exposed, some trainer would tell me something or show me something, and it may make sense. They may go, oh, okay, that's cool, whatever. But I didn't have a place at that time in my personal experience to actually apply it. So logically, it made sense. I'm like, okay, whatever. And then you just forget about it. And then 2 years later, 3 years later, you're like, that was good advice. That was really good advice. I just wasn't ready for the advice yet, right? So that's a part of the process too, And then suddenly you go like, oh, now I have a place to put that piece of information. Awesome, right? And you can start to use it. And that kind of stuff's going to happen to you for your entire career as a trainer, like, for sure.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about. Like, this isn't a linear path, and there's a saying that hindsight is 20/20, man. And sometimes we're like, oh my goodness, I remember this guy telling me this, and then the ability to revisit that. One of the things that you helped me with, Michael, and I'll always remember this, is superstitious associations.
Oh yeah.
Let's speak on that for a second, because that helped me so much. And it was a lot of times it's with e-collar work or not understanding the dog's threshold and putting them in a place where they start applying this superstitious association. So what is superstitious associations?
So a superstitious association is anytime the dog takes an aversive experience, an unpleasant experience for them, and applies it to something other than what we intended in our training process. Usually they attribute it to something in the context or the environment, right? So
Mhm.
a classic, and we talk about them a lot it can happen in all kinds of dog training. It's not just with tools and that kind of thing. It can happen in lots of different places, right? In the
Yes.
old days, people would do this kind of thing on purpose, right? So like if an electric fence would create a superstitious association in a sense, in that the dog thinks that the fence bit them, right?
Yep.
That's a superstitious association that serves us, right? If your dog jumped on the counters and you zipped them with an e-collar and they think the counter bit them, right? Then they have a superstitious association. They think that came from the counter, and that then may be useful for us, but a lot of them aren't useful. Like if my dog was across the room and investigating something, and I called them and they didn't come when called, and I did improper preparation and I hit them with an electronic collar, there's a possibility, and I wanted to punish them for not coming when called, they might associate it with the thing they were investigating. And now,
Mhm.
instead of taking that and saying, oh, that's because I didn't come when called, they go, oh, now I'm afraid of this thing that I was engaged with at the time. And so our goals normally in dog training are to avoid that. If I apply an aversive to you, if I use an electronic collar or a leash correction, or if I raise my voice, or if I do anything that the dog finds aversive in order to change behavior, then I want them to attribute it to the behavior that I'm trying to change, not the environment, not me, not other things. And so we go through a lot of different safeguards to prevent that from happening. And so there's a variety of things that have a tendency to make these more likely. One is the amount of training the dogs had. The less training
Yes.
the dogs had, the less likely they are to have a kind of constructural framework, a place to put that information. And so they'll frequently pin those things to the context, to the environment, right?
Yes.
So training matters. Another is familiarity with the tools, like how we introduce the tools. So if you're going to use a training collar or an e-collar or anything, the dog's familiarity and fluency and understanding at how we introduce those affects it, right? And then when you're applying aversives, are the dog focused on things? Are those things doing things? Distance? Oh, there's a bunch of factors that govern them. And if you kind of understand that, then we can set up our training in such a way that we virtually never get those things, right?
Yeah,
And
man.
why
Yeah.
does one person's dog afraid to go into this place because it got corrected in that place? Because that was done improperly, right? And they pinned that aversive experience to the context.
Yeah, and it's important to understand this stuff. Like, and what I hear you saying is like preparedness, introduction, clarity and communication. But it's
Absolutely.
also important as professionals that we know this so we can deconstruct, reverse engineer the behavior that we're seeing at a given case that we're walking into of how this happened. And a
Mhm.
lot of times people don't prepare the dog, they don't introduce, they go like what we were talking about earlier, instant gratification. Let me slap
Mhm.
this e-collar on the dog, put it at a high level, and zap the dog when he's getting in the trash or whatever. Now the dog won't even go into that room. The dog, I mean, there's so many things that can be fallout of improperly understanding and using tools and approaches to communication with the dog. And the other thing, like superstitious association, the association is a very important word as well, because dogs are associative thinkers, where we are more linear. As human beings, we have a different part of our brain. We have the prefrontal or the neocortex. And so the way that we process information is different in some aspects, a lot of aspects than what a dog does.
Yeah, and there are similarities too. So
Yes.
neurobiologically, there are lots of similarities. The differences in humans is our ability to kind of project cause and effect further into the future, to kind of defer things. So a language allows us to kind of understand concepts through verbal communication, not necessarily through direct interaction, all things that dogs don't do as well as we do. And so I think they have a prefrontal cortex. There's points at which they're thinking. It just works differently than ours in a sense. And you're right in that they don't pick up stuff the same way. And a lot of times the associative learning, classical conditioning, the Pavlovian conditioning, the associative learning that's happening, and we're subject to the same things. We're relying on the environment to teach the dog a lot more, right? Because there's no explanation given, right? The difference with a human being past or early childhood is you can explain to them, like, don't do that. This bad things are going to happen when this happens. The dogs have to directly experience those things. And so our setups, our training setups become really important. So they make the associations we want them to make, right? And there are some core principles in there that if you know those, you know the things you got to watch out for, right? I mentioned when I put up a little blurb the other day, just because I was editing a class that I'd taught in the past. And one of the things is you have to be careful about novelty in aversives, right? And that's one of the places where this really shows its head, because a dog, human beings too, when you're exposed to something new, you're a little careful. Doesn't matter if you got no experience with a new culture, you're in a new place, some new activity that you've never done, you're like, is this safe? What do I do here? And so you're a little bit kind of hyper vigilant and aware, looking for the danger in it. Like, it's adaptive. It's how creatures stay alive. And dogs have this too, right? And a lot of dogs behave badly or don't do what their owners want them to do because there's some kind of novel distraction or something they've never seen before pops up. And then the dog says, I've never seen that before, so it's woofing at it. So the dog behaves badly, and we think, well, we got to correct that bad behavior. And if you punish the dog at the point in front of novelty like that, it frequently creates superstitious associations. The dog's like, hey, I've never seen this thing before. Maybe it's not safe. And then we add pressure, and the dog goes, yep, not safe. Sure enough, I was right. I got to be careful. I've got to avoid those things. And there we've created a superstitious association. So one of the big underlying principles here is be cautious about aversives and novelty together in combination. That's a bad combo for dogs.
How would you suggest adapting training styles to be acceptance of novelty?
The acceptance of novelty comes through generalizing their socialization experiences. And what I mean by this is I'm helping them a lot in the early stages. We go new places, and I make sure you have a good experience. I go someplace else, I show you some new kind of distraction, and I make sure you have a good experience. I don't set up novel distractions or novel difficulties to make you fail so that I can make sure. So there's a kind of old school concept. It's not an old school concept, it's still real, but called proofing, right? Where basically when I started in dog training, you would set the dog up to make a mistake so you could punish the mistake so they'd learn what not to do. And to some degree, dogs were learning what to do by learning what not to do, right? Yeah. In that sense. And so that system, the ideas around that system still persist. People think like, okay, my dog knows how to sit now, so I need to proof that. And I need to proof that by putting out different kinds of distractions and taking my dog new places and then making sure they do it, which is fine. That's a part of the process for sure. Yes. But the most important part is that when you change the context, you add a new distraction, a different one they've never seen before. Or when I go someplace new, I help them initially. I don't punish them. I'm prepared to guide them. And if I guide them in enough different circumstances, they go, oh, okay, I get it. All these context cues don't matter. It's just the behavior matters. And at that point, they've generalized it. And then if they don't do it and I apply some pressure for not having done it, they don't associate it with the context. They know what it's for. And I don't get that same fallout. But the less training the dog has, the less work on generalization and socialization, the more you have to be careful with that.
Yes.
And that's where a lot of people, they fall down. The dog does great in the one location they always practice. They go someplace new. The dog doesn't do so great, and they start correcting the dog. And now the dog is afraid of the new environment, or is stressed in new environment, or stressed around vehicles, or whatever the heck was happening in the new environment, right?
Yeah. So, or the relationship gets
sure.
damaged as well, right? So it's
the dog's like, hey, you don't have my back. I don't understand why this is happening to me, etc. There's all those kinds of things, right? Clarity, like I think the big discussion in dog training right now is around this idea of kind of aversive control, because it's necessary in dog training. At some point, dogs have to do something they don't want to do, and how do we navigate those waters without fallout? How do I get to the point where I can have a dog have some responsibility to behave a certain way, and not get all the traditional fallout with pressure, old, poorly applied aversive training, right? So
yeah, well, preparing, that's this with the preparedness of when the aversive needs to come, that the dog is prepared for that. And with my clients too, like, one of the things that I've seen a number of times is the dog is doing great, and we're in the formative years, right? Taking them out, like you were saying, as a young pup, experiences, and this is what the formative years. And remember the root word. I'm a big fan of root words and looking at language. Is the format, right? Format that. So whenever we format a computer, we prepare that computer to receive programming. And this is something that is now present, kind of baked into that dog. We've done it through the formative years. We've programmed this dog to have a vast variety of abstract experiences, novel contraptions that we have in the human world, from buses, skateboards, strollers, right? There's so many things, bouncing balls, crazy kids. And so now we're prepared, we're starting to work on it. And then my clients take the dog to the dog park. Dog gets attacked in their presence, or something happens like that, and it wipes it all away, man. Or now the dog's like, that's what I'm talking. Yeah, huge setback. And not just with, now we have Superstitious association with dogs. Now you didn't help me when you've been helping me along this whole way. And what do you think about dog parks, Michael? Just, I mean, this is kind of an abstract, kind of a tangent, but
yeah, I dislike them extensively. So needless to say, dog parks are useful. Like, I use dog parks, and by operating outside the dog park. So I use them as a distraction when I'm socializing puppies, right? So I start further away from the dog park, and I move up closer until I'm outside the dog park doing my thing, and the puppy's ignoring all the dogs in the dog park, right? Yeah, it's an uncontrolled environment. My wife calls them the doggy mosh pits, right? It's a completely uncontrolled environment. And so as the more you get into dog training, the more important you realize how much you realize the importance of controlling your dog's experiences, like making sure that they stay within a metered range. And that's where the dogs build confidence and resilience, and they'll bounce back from bad experiences because we've kept the experiences within a productive range while they're developing and learning. And so that means controlling the kind of interaction my dog has with other dogs, making sure that I am able to predict the intensity of certain experiences that are going to happen for my dog. And dog parks just throw all that out the window. You have no idea who you're going to encounter in there. You have no idea what their skills are, their social skills are. The owners are all over the map. Most of them are disengaged from their dog. They go to the dog park just to let the dog run around and let the dog park do the work for them. So they may be sitting there reading a book or stay on their phone, not paying any attention to the fact that their dog's running around humping other dogs or getting terrorized or whatever that is. So in general, there's lots of space. Somebody has a nice, well-adjusted dog, and or they're in a certain neighborhood and they get away with it. The dog goes, you have people say all the time, oh, I went to the dog park and my dog, he loves it. He was fine. He never had any. Good for you. You dodged a whole bunch of bullets there. But for every one person that did that, there's 100 now that they have issues that they're trying to clean up that all started in the dog park. So I think if there would be a way to have a dog park be kind of like a doggy daycare, where they were moderated and there were rules about people how to interact, and you had people with some skills kind of supervising stuff, where that kind of situation could be used productively. But I don't know anybody that's doing that. I don't know any municipality that has a dog park that's like that. They're just free-for-alls in general.
Yeah, I had the idea of a dog park ranger, right? Just like we have forest rangers and different things that would go out there and kind of just not necessarily be involved with everything, but just kind of be a floating force of regulation that could help people understand. But we're not there yet. Hopefully someday we might be. And another important thing to realize is that the psychology of the dog, and they're the familiar pack units. And so if they go to this place over and over and see these dogs, and they tend to pack up, and that might be another aspect of this that is worth consideration, is that if you come in with a novel dog, with a group of dogs that's packed up, then that's asking for trouble.
Oh, yes, many things can go wrong in dog parks, unfortunately.
Well, and people don't realize how to read a dog's body language. That's the other aspect of that's very important as trainers. So let's talk about that. Like reading dogs' body language. How do you teach that?
So it's a sort of long process. There's some big ticket items. So there's a couple of books that I recommend to people. One is Brenda Aloff's book called Canine Body Language, which is a great book with a bunch of photos and drawings of their different stuff. And dog trainers, the whole kind of reading dog body language can go a little bit too far. It's like human body language experts that are saying, if a person stands like this, then they're feeling this. If their arms are crossed, they're this, and that kind of thing. And there's truth in all of that. And I think that with dog body language is the same way. There are some kind of core principles that'll send you in the right direction, and you should learn to read the big signs, right? But there are always exceptions to that. And you have to be prepared for the exceptions, right? Like growling isn't always threatening, piloerection, which is 99% of the time the hair standing up on the dog's back, which 90% of the time is the dog feeling threatened and stressed, can also be out of arousal for some dogs. There are certain dogs that will do it when they're chasing a ball. So and some dogs are very upright and really stiff acting, and they mean nothing by it. Most dogs, when they get stiff and upright, they're aroused and alert, and you have to be careful. So anyway, I think when we start talking about dog training body language, you have to be a little bit careful to make absolute reads off of body language, but knowing the nuances of it will really help you kind of stay ahead of things. And so I love Brenda Aloff's book, that one. And then she has another book too called Canine Aggression. And in that book, she has lots of drawings, right? And it's covering aggression. And I like the drawings for canine body language instead of the photographs to some degree. And the reason for that is the same. I'm an avid birder. I'm really into birds. And there are bird identification guides that are photographic identification guides, and there are others that are drawn, that are hand drawn, right? And the better ones tend to be the drawn ones because they give you a generalized picture. I think sometimes if somebody looks at a photograph, then they think it has to look exactly like that, right? And so then my dog didn't look exactly like that, because they're being too specific instead of seeing the general principles of the dog's body language. And so drawings sometimes help. So that's the other thing. I'm off on a tangent here, but Brenda Aloff's other book on canine aggression doesn't have any photos. It's all drawings. And I love the drawings. I don't know. She may have done the drawings. I don't know who did the drawings for her, but the drawings are great because they give you a lot of the postural things and a lot of the facial expressions, but in a generalized sense. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I was wondering if they had any of the picture. Read sample. Let me see if it has anything.
Dog, that's fun. And there, so you can see her little drawings. There's her fox terriers, or whoever did her fox terriers, and so you get an idea of stiff, upright tail, whether the ears are back or not. But it's a general dog, not in a specific dog. And so that's a great book. And she has another one called Dog Body Language. Both are great books. And then the other thing is just pay it like observationally. Like if you are watching dogs play with each other, or you're introducing dogs, or you're walking dogs together, begin to make note of each individual dog and their changes in expression and mood based on how they carry their body. And this is another one of those things that takes time to get good at, right? And projecting it across different breeds is also a little bit of a challenge, because different breeds carry themselves differently and they express themselves differently, and some are more overt and obvious and others are not. Like if my German Shepherd is stiff and staring at somebody, then you got to watch out, be prepared. like do something, right? But if
Yep.
my husky is doing the same thing, that doesn't necessarily mean shit for the husky, right? Huskies are just like that. They're upright, ears up, tail up, staring all the time. Like they're happy. And so they may not, that what may be a warning sign for one dog isn't a warning sign for another dog, and lots of stuff like that that you get into. So experienced trainers are useful for beginning trainers in this fashion too. You don't realize how much you pick up and internalize this stuff. I think that's one of the big differences between beginner trainers or newer trainers or pet dog owners and skilled and experienced trainers. The skilled and experienced trainers are constantly predicting behavior, whereas beginning trainers and the novice is reacting to behavior. So what they do is the dog does something and they react to it. As you gain experience, you predict what the dog's going to do and you do something before they do it. And you do it all the time. And so, and kind of learning body language is the way you do it. And you internalize that and you go like, okay, my dog's starting to pay too much attention to this thing. I know what the next step is. I'll just do something now. And so
Yes,
you see a lot of stuff happening.
And this comment just showed up, and so true, man. Like, this is what I tell: get your hands on some dogs. Get, like, if you can, watch. She was doing socialization classes or doggy daycares, like you said, and we have breadth of knowledge, depth of knowledge right in front of us. That case studies that we can look at every single day, man. And same thing with. It'd be just like with your seminars, right? Every week is like a new picture, a new experience, and a new knowledge set that you can start to apply and accumulate. And yeah, Nelson too. Do you know Nelson? Looking to bring in the dog before it makes a decision. Absolutely.
Yeah. 100%.
Well, and let's talk too about you said classical association. I want to get into classical versus operant and the environment, learning from the environment. How do you explain difference in classical versus operant, Michael?
So I always put them in a learning theory module that I teach all the time, and I've taught it about 1 billion times by now, where basically this is the kind of underpinnings of how dogs, or humans for that matter, learn, right? And I kind of divide it up into 3 different buckets. One is classical or Pavlovian conditioning, right? And which I'll talk about in a sec. The next is operant conditioning or instrumental learning. Those are words for the same system, Skinnerian stuff. And then the final is kind of the role of emotion and mood in learning, right? Okay. And that's one that doesn't get talked about a lot, because people look at learning as a little too mechanistic. That's an old idea, right? The radical behaviorists of Skinner's age said, animals are just input-output machines. They don't have emotions like human beings, and they're just responding to their environment, right? Which is not true, of course, right? We know they have emotional states. Whether or not their emotional states are exactly what ours are is open to debate, but they definitely have emotional states, and rich inner lives that way, and their mood and emotional state strongly affects learning. So I talk about it in 3 different categories. Classical or Pavlovian conditioning is the stuff that you heard about in high school psychology, right? Ivan Pavlov, a Russian physiologist, was not studying dog behavior at all. He was using dogs in experiments to study digestion, because he wanted to understand the human digestive process. And he accidentally stumbled across what he called classical conditioning, also gets called Pavlovian conditioning, named after him, which is he noticed that the presence of the researchers in the room with the dogs was affecting his experiments. So he made this automated feeding machine, so the experimenters didn't have to be in the room, and a tone would sound, or a bell would sound, or a buzzer would sound, and food would get dispensed in this feeder, and the dogs could eat it, and they could measure salivary output, which is part of the digestive process, because they had tubes in the dog's salivary glands. And he noticed that there were enough pairings of sound, food, sound, food, sound, food, sound, food enough times, and the sound would prompt salivation. The dog would have a response to a sound, a previously neutral stimulus, right, that was mimicked the response to to a meaningful stimulus like food, right?
Right.
And this classical conditioning, right? And so this is happening all the time in dog training. Anything that's repetitive is happening, and it's not, and we tend to think of it as governing all the reflexes, things like involuntary things like salivation, digestive enzyme production, heart rate increase, all these kinds of things that are involuntary, that we don't choose to do, that happen. But also there are voluntary aspects to classical conditioning, right? This predicts this, this predicts this, this predicts this. This happens, and you'll start to anticipate that. And we rely on it to learn. Like, we are all creatures are looking for these same sets of patterns in the world. If something predicts something else repeatedly, then that's information that I need to take on board while I'm learning. So that's one piece of the puzzle. And it's kind of the mechanical part. The learning that takes place there is not a choice. It's a conditioned response, right? So if I go to the park every day and play ball with my dog at the park, and I do that for a month, if I pull up at the park, my dog's going to be excited. That he's going to be bouncing up and down. That excitatory response is not voluntary. It's conditioned. It's Pavlovian conditioning. He can't not have that. I can teach him what to do with that excitement, but the internal excitement, that arousal response he has, is involuntary, and it's connected to Pavlovian conditioning or classical conditioning. So that's one piece of the puzzle. Lots of places we use it on purpose, and there's lots of places where it's happening. And then the operant part, the way I explain the difference between classical conditioning or Pavlovian conditioning and operant conditioning is all the cause and effect stuff. That's where dogs make choices based on their past experiences, right? That means if I do something and something good happens, then maybe I'll do more of that. If I do something and something bad happens, then maybe I'll do less than that. If I'm uncomfortable and I do something and the discomfort stops, maybe I'll do more of that, right? If I'm uncomfortable, do something and it doesn't stop, maybe I don't do that. That's just not working for me. And this is how we navigate the world. This is how we figure out how to do things, and we're weighing the outcomes, and then we make choices based on our past experience, right?
Yeah.
And within operant conditioning, there's two tracks that are happening. There's the track that's happening during what I call behavior acquisition, when you're learning something new. So if you're learning to do something new, you're paying very close attention to the outcomes. You've never done this before. You're learning to tie your shoe. You're learning to do a math problem. You're learning to, assemble something. It doesn't matter what it is, right? And dogs too. They're learning a new skill. They're very attentive to outcomes. Do I get rewarded? Do I get punished? Does bad things happen? Do good things happen? They're paying close attention. The longer you go in the process, the more certain types of behaviors, once you're out of the novelty stage of the behavior acquisition phase, it switches over to habitual learning, right? Where behaviors that are habitual, that you've been doing, you're still making a choice to do those behaviors. They're not involuntary. You choose to do them, but you choose to do them without much consideration of the consequences, right? Yes. So if I tie my shoe a certain way all the time, and one day I didn't tie it, I went to tie it, it didn't go well, right? I don't abandon all my learning. I just go, oh, I must have done that wrong or whatever. It doesn't change the behavior very much. You go back and do it the same way the next time, right? And so, and this is important for us because when I'm talking about dog behavior, I really need to talk about the difference between a dog learning a new behavior and a dog that's been doing a behavior for an extended period of time. Both of them can be operant. Both of them can be choices on the dog's part, but the outcomes don't have the same effect, right? And then the final category is emotional state, manipulating the dog's emotional state, being aware of the dog's emotional state so that we have the right emotional state to allow the dog to learn the right amount of arousal, amount of confidence versus anxiety, all those things, and manipulating. And all three of those categories come together basically to describe how dogs learn and how people learn too, for that matter.
Well, that emotional state is huge, man. Like, because a lot of times too, we're trying to get that emotional state to change to accept an environment, or it's because of what we were talking about earlier about the superstitious association. Now the emotional state has gone, down quite a bit, and so now we're trying to manipulate the environment to bring that emotional state to more of an acceptance. And so now we're taking the acquisitional conversation that they had and manipulating it to a more beneficial habitual outcome.
Yeah. And I think the thing, yeah, for sure. And with the thing about emotional state is that the one that's sometimes the least in our control, right? And so we tend to focus on the others because those are the ones that are really easy for us to manipulate, right? I can manipulate these situations and where you get rewarded and where you get punished. And if I'm doing things in repeatedly in certain locations, I can manipulate Pavlovian or classical conditioning. Those are the ones that are easiest. And sometimes the emotional state, if I bring a dog into a space and they're scared, right? I can't just say, hey, stop being scared. So that emotional state is the hardest one for us to manipulate. But at a certain point, it's also the most important one. Like if my dog is in the wrong state of mind emotionally, they won't be able to learn the lesson I want them to learn. If they're scared enough, they can't take on any other nuanced kind of information. And so that one, I think, gets dismissed sometimes, not by serious trainers that know what they're doing. They're aware of this, but by beginners, they don't see that or they don't think about that aspect of it. Having the dog in the right state of mind, both in terms of emotion and in terms of arousal, to suit the situation in which I'm putting them, to suit the job or the lesson that I'm trying to teach them. And sometimes maybe a prolonged amount of work. So if I have a dog that's afraid, then I have to get them comfortable enough so they may not be totally fear-free, but their anxiety level drops enough for them to start to process detailed information. Because at a certain level of anxiety, you don't process details. Human beings do, right? If you're in a stressful situation, little nuanced stuff goes out the window and all you think about is being safe. And you don't learn well in that environment. And so us kind of recognizing that and recognizing how much work we need to do to shift that, to make sure that the dog's set up to learn what we want them to learn, right?
Yeah, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? Those are the fearful responses in our body. So just like you were saying, like when we have novel experiences, if we travel to a new place or whatever, we're kind of trepidatious. We're taking it all in. We're developing what's called the comfort zone, right? That's what we call it in human beings. And if we have a situation where we are put in fear or we've experienced trauma, some like a snake bite or I don't know, like we see a rattlesnake and we're not going to sit and contemplate philosophy. We're not going to, access the different parts of our brain. The brain is pretty cool because it has a couple functions. It has the psychocybernetic mechanism, reticular activator, all this stuff that is present that keeps our body. One, it keeps us in homeostasis, so 98.6 degrees, our enteric nervous system of all the digestive fluids and the cerebellum operating the heartbeat, our breath, right? I don't even know how many times I breathed on this conversation with you, and that's good. I don't have to remember, right?
Think about
and so, and then another part of that is to keep us safe from these novel experiences that could hurt or kill us. And when we're in that fight, flight, freeze, fawn phase, we're in a state of mind where it literally has shut off our capabilities of reasoning, and it has turned on our limbs, like the blood flow to the limbs and viscera, all that stuff is protected. And so like you said, it's something that we can't control. We're not in control of it. And it's a safety mechanism to keep us alive and keep us functioning in the environment that we're in. And so how do we have to understand. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and for dog training, it's not just fear. So we use fear because there are lots of dogs that are fearful, and people with fearful dogs are frequently putting them in situations and trying to get them to do things, right? And not recognizing like, hey, you got to dispense with the doing things now until you address this underlying emotional state, right? We got to get them comfortable enough before we do anything. Like, so the process of teaching is going to be a waste of your time right now, and you're going to color your dog's attitude about the whole process. But it's beyond just fear. We use that one as the prime example because it's so common and it can be so negative in its impact on learning, but also just level of excitement or lack thereof, right? So we're manipulating arousal and motivation all the time, and I need a certain amount of arousal and motivation for a task, for the dog to want to buy in, to want to do things, to want to learn, to like, there's a motivation level that's necessary. And then there's a level that's too much. You're way too excited. You're way too aroused. You're through the roof. And that's incompatible with learning this lesson that I want. And at the other end of the spectrum, you got a dog that's like, I don't really care about that. I'm not motivated by this stuff. I'm not excited. And I'm trying to get them to do things. Well, that's not working either, right? They don't have enough in the, and so we're constantly manipulating these moods and emotional states to get them kind of right for the task at hand. And it may be a different one for a different task. If I want to teach you to lie in your place bed in the living room, then there's a certain amount of arousal and commitment and energy necessary for that. If I want to teach you to jump a 1 meter hurdle or go dock diving, there's an amount of rest for that. If I want you to do a 100-meter recall back to me, I need a certain amount of excitement and arousal, and vice versa, right? And so we're constantly manipulating that emotional state kind of to suit the situation at hand and help the dog learn what lesson we're trying to teach them in that moment, right?
What the importance of thresholds have to do with that, do you think?
So for me, and I'm assuming we have the same definition of threshold, and threshold just means like, how easy is it to prompt a response in a dog on a certain aspect of their personality? And a dog with a low threshold is easy to stimulate a response, and a dog with a higher threshold is harder to stimulate a response. And you could talk about thresholds for lots of different aspects of a dog's personality. Like a dog could have a social stress threshold, it could have an environmental stress threshold, and all those kinds of things. It could have a threshold for predatory stimulation. We could talk about lots of different aspects of it. So I did basically say low threshold dogs are more likely to notice things and more likely to react to those things. And higher threshold dogs are less likely to pay attention to little things and are harder to provoke reactions in. Doesn't say anything about the intensity of reaction, but they're harder to. So thresholds play in based on me navigating the environments I want to put the dog in. So with a low threshold dog, I know that dog is going to notice new things more easily and more likely react to them more easily. So I'm sort of prepared. If I know a dog is lower threshold, there's exercises we do to raise their thresholds. And then also I'm keenly aware of the environment I choose to work them in and put them in, knowing that they're the type of dog that's going to notice that stuff. With a dog that's a higher threshold, then that allows me, once I've determined that, allows me to go like, oh, that dog's not going to care so much about that, or you won't notice that thing, or if there's a mistake happens, he is unlikely to go over threshold and react badly. So it allows me to put that dog in situations I might not want to put the low threshold dog in until they were ready or until I had more preparation.
Yep, and this goes into the understanding of body language and understanding that dogs, even if it's the same litter of dogs, each dog is an individual. And to know that one dog in that same litter can have a totally different threshold than another dog, and being able to temperament test and to know this stuff is important as professionals.
And thresholds change, right? So that's the other thing that they're modifiable through training and experience. So you can have a dog that genetically has relatively low thresholds, but with the right sets of early experiences and exposure and development and life experience, you'd never know that by the time you see them when they're older. You'd never have any idea. They act just like all the other dogs that had higher genetic thresholds. So when we talk about thresholds, it's important to kind of recognize where a dog lands in that continuum as we're getting to know them and train them. Like, okay, is this a lower threshold or a higher threshold dog? That's important information, but also that's not an absolute. It's not stuck in the mud. I can change that with my dog's experiences. Like if you couldn't modify thresholds, then a lot of what we do as dog trainers would be a waste of time, right? So if that dog was always to be afraid of this, so we constantly are kind of working to shift those thresholds and move them in a direction that's productive, right? But genetics limit how far we can go, right? With everything.
Would you base the importance of genetics in dogs?
Genetics defines the possible range of behaviors. So I say a dog's possibilities, what they're capable of, is defined genetically. There's a range from here to here, and where they land in that range is governed by what happens, our training, their life experiences, and all that kind of thing. but that range is defined genetically. Like, I can't turn a pug into a Malinois. Ain't gonna happen. There are things that a Malinois can do if they're experienced a certain way that a pug can't do, and vice versa. Like, all dogs have their things, but the range of possible expressions are governed by genetics. And there are people out there that kind of want to discount the importance of genetics, like, oh, genetics don't matter. It's just what if you do good training, or if you just love them enough, or whatever that's going to be, right? There's this idea that it's all experience and it's not genetics. Well, we know that's not the case, right? Obviously, there's strong genetic drivers of behavior, and they have tendencies, but I can manipulate the dog within a range.
Yeah, well, it reminds me, Robert Cabral said something I always remember is like, I can curate that which is within the dog. I can't make the dog something they're not. And I think that speaks to that genetic disposition, the makeup of what that dog is truly. And it's important to understand that, right? Especially in some dogs, there's outliers, man. There's dogs that are going to be fixed by addressing this stuff, but there's some dogs that are going to be managed. What do you think of that statement? Like, there's just some dogs that are
when it comes to behavioral issues, or the dog's ability to enter into certain environments or certain situations, then there are going to be dogs that will never be perfectly suitable for certain types of environments or situations, and those dogs are managed. And so with many dogs that manifest with a behavioral issue, we make them better. We define the environments in which they can be successful. We define the situations in which you can put them in and safely, and then we avoid the other ones. And there are many dogs out there that have wonderful lives, that are great dogs, but you have to avoid certain very specific circumstances. Not every dog can be okay in every circumstance, in every situation. And that's just a reality. It's the same as it is with human beings, right? There's no, I couldn't take every person on the planet and turn them into a Navy SEAL, right? Like, they're not. There's going to be people that's not in their makeup, right? And I think people as trainers, that can feel like a little bit of a failure, like this idea that you're supposed to be able to solve people's problems. Well, yes, our goal is to help people solve their problems and make dogs' lives and people's lives better. But you have to recognize where the limits of there are, and the limits there are going to be driven by genetics, or sometimes by past experience, sometimes formative. If certain things weren't done during a dog's early developmental stages, then that ship has sailed, and you can only make so much progress in that direction. And that dog will always have some deficits there that you have to take into account. And management is the part of training that lots of people don't like to do, but at some point it's essential. It's essential as a way of setting dogs up to learn what we want them to learn, to avoid behavior problems getting started. But it's also a way that a dog with a certain temperament type can live a full life, as long as we avoid certain types of situations or triggers.
Yeah, and that can be a pretty tough conversation with clients, or even the other tough conversation is incompatibility, and especially for elderly or that have gotten in a high maintenance dog, or then we might have to have a conversation of like, is this dog in the right place? Is this the right dog for you? And those are tough, man.
Yep. No, I like, there's the analogy people will use all the time if people say like, oh, your dogs are like your children. I could never get rid of one of my children. And I'm like, no, your dogs are like your romantic relationships.
Okay, I like
all work out. And just because they didn't work out isn't a reflection of either of you. It's not the dog's fault, and it's not necessarily your fault if it's the wrong kind of match. And there are places in which a certain type of dog and a certain type of person are just not suitable for each other. The way they navigate the world and the things they want from it are not the same. And you do both the dog and a person a disservice by leaving them in that situation. The dog doesn't have the life that it deserves, and the person doesn't have the life that they deserve in that spot. And so this kind of shaming of people over the fact that they would rehome a dog or any of that kind of stuff. I think our goals as trainers should be to try to get the right for somebody for dogs and people that are closer together, a little bit of counseling this is what we're doing, helps them keep that relationship alive and thriving, and they grow together and they wind up with a long-term relationship.
Yes.
Others, like, you know what? I think we both need to go our separate ways and it would be better for both of us. And that's not a reflection on either of us.
Yeah. And you don't take that on as a trainer. It's hard, I know.
Yeah.
But we owe the client the truth. And sometimes the truth can be brutal. And not always, but I just wanted to speak about, like, there's outlier dogs, there's management dogs, but there's also not good fits. And I think that that's one of the toughest parts of what we do as dog trainers is to drop that truth of, like, look, you need to rehome this dog, and it's not your fault, it's not my fault. And a lot of trainers, and it's not my responsibility to rehome the dog. And that's another aspect. It's just such an interesting thing. And not only that, but there's also, go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say, it's a difficult thing. There's nothing about that that's easy, right?
Yeah.
And there's no right way to do it either.
No, but the truth is once we have that, we owe that to the client. We owe that to people that are paying their hard-earned money as for professional opinion. And if that's the opinion that we have, then we shouldn't shirk from that. We should definitely talk about.
I agree 100%. I think people's ability to hear it sometimes is based on your relationship with them. So normally, I may, on the first contact with a person and a dog, go like, I think this is a bad match, right? Sometimes the first time you meet them, you're like, this is not a good combination, right? But
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell them the first time I meet them. I'm not going to show up on day one on eval and say, like, no, you guys are wrong for each other. You should get rid of the dog. Because they're not going to hear you. Like, they're like, what kind of trainer you just came in and just told me to get rid of the dog? You have to gain their trust and build a relationship with them so they know you have their best interest and the dog's best interest at heart when you give that bit of information. So when you tell them the truth is important, and it's important also the relationship you built with them before you do it, right? So I always go in and I say, like, this is difficult and this is why it's difficult, but let's give it let's do, these are the things that I'd start changing right away if we're going to make this work. And then over time, they see that you're committed to them, that you're on their side, and they get to know you. And then if there's still difficulties down the road and you go, like, listen, the truth is you and the dog aren't right for each other, then they're more likely to hear that and take that on board than they would if you came in on day one. So
Yeah,
you can't, like, I'm all for truth and transparency and telling people what like I want to tell people exactly what I think, but also you have to set them up to hear it, to actually take it on board, right? And if you walk in as a dog trainer on day one and tell people to get rid of their dogs, that's not going to go the way you want it to go. They're just going to be down the road and get another trainer.
And I think too that we need some qualifications or qualifying drills, behaviors that we can prove what we see initially at first blush, right? Like, okay, let's try this, let's try that. Okay, it's just what I thought. This is not a good fit, but we've tried stuff. And then rapport. I talk to people about rapport, both in the dog relationship with you as a trainer that's coming in, and then rapport with the client too. And rapport is power, right? And so when you build that trust, and when you have a good background, a good reputation, and this is what I tell new dog trainers too, is like, reputation takes years and years to build and 1 second to destroy. So be careful out there on social media, you guys. I see some people that are I think that they're a little too much right now. Like, take the time to build the reputation, rapport, and then once we've established that rapport, then we can have that tough conversation.
Agreed. And there's a responsibility that comes with that too, right? So
yes.
You've built trust with somebody. Now they're taking your advice seriously. So be responsible for the advice you're giving, right? For sure.
Responsibility is your ability to respond. That's my.
I love the root word thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, dude, I have a Latin and Greek dictionary, man, and even like I'm looking up definitions all the time. Like even threshold, people don't know threshold. We used to have or the floors that we used to have back in the day, hundreds of years ago, used to be dirt floors.
Right.
And we would have a threshold, which we would put thresh or straw in there before we'd go into the house. And that was the threshold. They would hold the thresh so we can, clean ourselves off before we go into the house. And it's same definition. We have thresholds, a doorway that, in fact, let me show you, because this is what I just had, like up here, threshold. See,
nice.
A strip of metal. So that's the door threshold. But down here, the magnitude or intensity that must be exceeded for a certain reaction, phenomenon, result, or condition to occur or be manifold. So what you're saying, low threshold versus high threshold, limit below which stimulus caused no reaction, something, a level, rate, or amount which something comes into effect. And I'm always looking at the
Old English.
Well, the Latin, Greek, depending on the root of the word. Thresh cold, and then, but this is all, it didn't evolve. A lot of the words evolve, and it's cool to see how they've evolved through time.
Really cool.
Yeah. Let's go to the comment section. Michael, what do you think?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. How about that? It's Michael. I heard the first comment gets all expenses paid trip to train with Michael. Just
come on out.
Awesome. Nelson, I just said slow in, fast out. Dude, one of the things that I tell my clients, slow is fast, less is more.
Amen.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So like part of my current remaining mission with my time on the earth is to show people what good dog training looks like in timeline wise, right? Because a lot of the choices that especially professional dog trainers are making on a day-to-day basis are geared towards economics and efficacy in a certain time frame, and that's necessary. Like not everybody's going to take 2 years to get a result that they want. But it's important to recognize that there are compromises when you do that. And good dog training has a tendency to be undramatic, very slow, incremental progress over time, right? I've been filming my current dog who just turned 2, his entire upbringing. I've been planning this for years and I'm doing it finally, right? So I've recorded 90+% of all his training sessions from 8 weeks until now. And then I'm kind of voicing them over, but they're completely unedited on purpose, meaning I voice over them afterwards, but the whole thing's in there. Like what I did right before the session itself, all the downtime in the session, during it. And then you can see what a dog training session looks like in real life, because with these days with the internet, everything goes bang, 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 bang. And everybody sees something here and then a result there. And they think, well, what happened in between? Right. And a lot of important stuff happens in the downtime and all that sort of stuff. And we get an unrealistic feel for how fast it should go and what the flow should be like. And so slow is fast. If you look at really skilled dog trainers, they don't put those timelines on themselves with their own dogs. They're they're basically, the dog will tell me how fast I can go, and I go as fast as the dog tells me they're up for, right?
Yep. And when to stop and when to maybe take a couple steps back to take 10 steps forward, right? It's like, listen to the dog. The dog is, we have a feedback loop right here. And I often tell people, like, I'm not the expert, I'm the human. We're human beings. This is our expert. This is this is who tells us if we're on the right track and if we need to adjust it a little bit, or if I'm full of crap too. That's what I tell them. Don't believe me. Your dog is going to tell you, so that's so happy to see you and Michael having this conversation. Started working with dogs when I was 14. I'm 54 now.
All right.
I still love dog grooming and help people live a successful life with their dog. Awesome. Yeah, and I tell kids too, man. Like, and I see a lot of talent in my clients' kids more than I see in some of my colleagues. And I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
look,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. And I tell them, like, just like you started young, Mike, is like when I was a young kid, I knew I wanted to do this. When I was 8 years old, and now I'm 48,
That's great.
and I
Yep.
do that, and so I encourage them. As like, look, there's certain things in your life that are going to change. Like you're going to watch yourself grow, you're going to watch your friends and your environment grow, but there's certain aspects about you that will always remain the same. Pay
Yep.
attention to those.
For
Okay.
sure.
The ride is worth it. What's up, Tracy? Gentlemen, hello, gentlemen. Yes, the whole life effect about the journey. Stop worrying, wanting something to become it. Right?
Amen,
Yeah, that's
Nelson. Yep.
yeah. Do you know Nelson?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and then hey, and then okie doke. Questions for later. Okay, so now we got some questions here. Malinois are meant to have some aggression, including fun sports activities. Will there ever come a time when aggressive dogs no longer have practical use in society?
I hope not. I mean, there's a possibility. Like, so we are certainly looking, reducing their use on in those arenas these days. So law enforcement is using them less and less that way. Military, mostly they're using them for search work. Certainly one could argue whether that's a necessity to have them at all, period. But the breeds that I fell in love with as a kid and have spent my life working with, part of the reason that they are what they are is because they have been bred for aggression work and protection work and those sorts of things. And I'm a weird combination of traits. I'm a hippie pacifist that really likes biting dogs. So I'd go figure what that little internal contradiction of mine. But yes, I agree with you. Malinois are meant to have some aggression in sports activities, and increasingly society doesn't want that in dogs. And we may run up against a point in the future where they want that gone from society. But I hope not. I hope we can continue to interact with these creatures because they're amazing, and they're amazing not in spite of the fact that they have the potential for carrying aggression, but because of the fact that they do, in my opinion.
Yep. Well, and that, like you said, the aggression, sports activities, fun sports activities, like even the aggression we channel into by work, right? We channel into something that is productive, or where we establish a relationship through the aggressive tendencies that this dog innately has, right? And then also look at robots and stuff like that. Like even when I look at police situations where they're sending in drones and robots and stuff, where the dog would typically be the one that did that. We'll see innovations, and that might influence what we see. What genetic health issues do you think future Malinois breeders are likely to encounter after you're gone?
They're going to get the whole gamut. Like, so here's the problem with Malinois and Malinois breeding. Malinois were, until very recently, not popular amongst the general dog population. They were a kind of hardcore working dog, and a very specific hardcore working dog, meaning it was police, military, and police style protection disciplines. Belgium, Holland, France, the countries that are responsible for the breed in the last 125, 30 years. They were biting dogs. They were doing sports or disciplines that were meant to select dogs for law enforcement police work, right? And they did not care a rat's ass about what they look like, how big they were, none of that stuff. Did they do the work, and were they healthy? Meaning they had to do big jumps, they had to do all the thing, and they let the task that the dogs had to do select their breeding stock. And they were downright ruthless, like the old timer breeders that created the breed in the early days. They didn't put up with any kind of health issues. They didn't put up with any kind of deficiencies in temperament or any of that stuff. And so they were a little bit ruthless about that kind of thing. Now the breed in the last 20 years has exploded in popularity. When I first got I've been breeding Malinois myself for 30 years. And when I first got Malinois, you would never see a Malinois in a shelter. Ever. Like, and if one showed up, the 5 people in the town that had Malinois showed up like, what the heck? How did you get here? Right? That just not at all. Now shelters and rescues are full of them. I see them every day when I go out with just companion dog people, pet dog owners walking Malinois down the street, which you never saw 20 years ago. They were only people had them were law enforcement or kind of hardcore working dog people. And as soon as a breed starts to popularity expands outside of that, then there are going to be people that are going to be willing to breed them without all the selection process. Do they work? Are they healthy? Are they able to sustain it for extended periods of time? What's their temperament like? All that kind of stuff goes out the window. They just want dogs that look like Malinois. And so I think we're going to see over the next number of years a rise in genetic health issues that Malinois never had in the past, or because they were selected out if they had them. They'll be all the same ones that everybody else has, that all the purebred dog people that have become popular, the same problems they have, unfortunately.
Yep. I mean, a pit bull comes to mind. That's one thing that I see. Like a lot of this used to be more of a sound temperament, but I see some pretty off the wall pit bulls out there, man. I'm just like, whoa, so that's a perfect example.
Pit bull's another example. Like, so their history was dog fighting, right? And so, but the old time people that bred them for dog fighting back in the day cared about nothing but that. The dogs couldn't be aggressive towards people. They had to be physically very sound. They had to be healthy. Otherwise, they couldn't do all these things. And they selected only the dogs that did that. So traditionally, pit bulls were not aggressive towards people at all. Like, you had a really hard time finding a pit bull that would bite somebody in the old days because those guys wouldn't tolerate it. Like, they were dog fighters and they had to handle the dogs while they were fighting with each other and stuff like that. And the dog that would bite you would be a problem. Dog in the world, in the country, like, they're not. If you ever see those breed lists, the breed lists that say the most popular dog is the golden retriever, whatever, they're going off AKC registrations. They're not going off the number of dogs that are out there on the street. And there are more pit bulls than any other breed out there on the street. And they can be wonderful dogs, but because they're popular, there are all kinds of people breeding them with no selection process at all. Meaning they don't test them for anything. Their temperaments are bad. They don't care. There's lots of accidental breedings, all that kind of stuff. So it's all about selection when it comes to breeding. And as soon as a dog becomes a pop market for the puppies, and now you're in trouble, both health-wise and
temperament-wise. Frenchies. I mean, those are another example of this. It expands the pool. Thank you, darling. I just got a refill on my coffee. Come delivered to me. Room service. Love it. Right. Yeah. And so it's just the sheer, it's a numbers game, and a lot of them get through the cracks. That typically would be cold. And that's what we're talking about. That's what would happen. It's not for the faint of heart, but it's the truth of how these dogs were handled previously. In general, how has your training changed since the Leerburg DVD is, Michael?
Whew, good question. So it's always evolving and changing. So a couple of things that I would say are more on my radar now. So I think a lot more now. Well, one of the things is that I've learned a lot of nuance in some of the stuff that I've done. So some of the things that, like the Training with Food DVD that I did for Leerburg, which was a really successful DVD, and lots of people were introduced to me through that DVD. There's just a lot of little small nuances. Like, now I've broken luring down, for instance, into sport dog luring and companion dog luring, and I do them a little bit differently. There's lots of nuances in how much motivation you build and all kinds of stuff like that. So there's little, like, mechanical details that continue to evolve with everything you do. My leash work, my e-collar work, my physical manipulations like luring, etc. All those kinds of things, little small changes happen. The bigger thing is my focus on kind of understanding the role of Pavlovian conditioning and revisiting negative reinforcement work, like I had learned in my early stages of dog training, and modernizing kind of more traditional negative reinforcement work. Those are going to be a couple of the big things. One, I didn't appreciate at the time I was doing those videos, even if I knew it was present, I didn't appreciate how much Pavlovian conditioning affects everything we do in dog training. So we talk about it when we talk about charging markers and things like that, but it's seeping through everything. And it's become, to me, to become the most important part. like conditioning dogs to these type of activities happen in these locations and not in these locations. That's all Pavlovian conditioning, like chaining activity to context. And then the big one too is I learned dog training through pure escape and avoidance style training of like we did in the old days, and it was all teaching was done with negative reinforcement, right? And as I learned about reward-based training and took deep dives into use of reward-based training, I used negative reinforcement less and less, and sort of looked at it like, oh, that's a little bit more of a last resorty kind of thing. And although I was bringing it in, I was bringing it in kind of later and things like that. Now I'm looking for kindler, gentler ways to introduce the concept of negative reinforcement earlier in the process so that the dog is comfortable with that as a mode of communication, and then layering it over known behaviors that I taught with rewards. So the big differences are all in the nuances of how I'm using negative reinforcement now compared to 10 years ago, right? I'm kind of revisiting some stuff that I dismissed earlier in my career.
Yeah, and it makes total sense to me. I mean, because then it just brings another layer of understanding once the dog is prepared, and then now we can reintroduce the negative reinforcement to help proof and to bulletproof commands, and or the training.
Yeah, I think you're right. But what I'm really looking for is like, okay, one, I'm going to need it at some point to strengthen commands. I need it for dogs that are less motivated for rewards, because I can't get them to do the same amount of number of things for a reward because they don't care as much about rewards, right? And so I have to rely on it. So how can I introduce the concept of negative reinforcement without the fallout that we traditionally did? And how can I use it to teach the dog to understand that as a form of communication, but not use it to teach brand new behaviors all the time, right? So like, I'm not going in and trying to show you how to do everything with negative reinforcement, but I need you to understand negative reinforcement so that after I've taught you the basics of the behavior, I can put it under the control of negative reinforcement sooner than later, because I found that deferring it too much creates bigger stresses in the dog when you introduce it. So that's where most of my tinkering is happening these days. Like, how can I do this to get the best part of this while avoiding the things that we know are bad about its use, right? The things that the traditional argument against their use, right?
Yeah, and I totally geek out on that, with the dog in front of me, right? And just be like, how can I use this to make this a little bit faster, cleaner, better, more flashy, all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Michael needs to be a speaker at IACP again. Well, guess what?
Supposed to be this coming year, 2026. I was supposed to be the keynote speaker, only I said yes without looking at my calendar, and I said yes, and it's landing when my wife and I are doing our 60th birthday trip to Africa. We're going on safari in Africa, and we've been planning it for 25 years. So, so I will be at the IACP. I will be the IACP speaker in 2027. So,
okay.
Sorry about that. I apologize profusely. I'm like, I said yes before I looked at my calendar like an idiot. So, but I will be back at the IACP for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's where you and I first met at St. Louis. Geez, I don't even know. 2016, I think. I don't know when we're in St. Louis. People in the comments, I don't know. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, John, looking forward. So John Mimler, he used to be, I believe he was the president of IACP for a time. Awesome. Looking forward to this one. Heard Michael Ellis philosophy and dog training in Leerburg 2013, and literally made a plan to quit my corporate job that day to take my dog training hobby full time a few months later. Ooh. How about that?
Wow. Amazing. Oh,
yeah. The effect that you've had, Michael, this is why we call you the GOAT, dude.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So summer, he is doing it next year. Next year. The next day. Yeah, there you go. Yes. So sorry, summer, but the best. So happy on the podcast. Yes. Laura is awesome, man. She's from Costa Rica, one of my favorite places. I'll be in Costa Rica here in a couple weeks. I'm looking forward to that. Tim says hello. She would be a great speaker too. Who is he talking about? Oh, Brenda Aloff. This is when we were talking about Brenda Aloff.
I think she's spoken before, but it's been a while too.
Yeah, I was there. And it was, I mean, it wasn't really received as well because, like you said, like a lot of these photographs, I like the drawings too because we could do pointing and we could really emphasize the key characteristics of the body language that we want to pay attention to. Where a lot of these people, they take a photograph or people take a photograph training and we'll get the nay, the shame, shammer saying like, oh, that dog's got whale eye, or right, like
one of the things the whole there.
Totally. Well, one of the things I do is I do elementary school dog safety courses, and that's the thing is that I'll put up on the projector or whatever, and I'll ask all the kids, are these dogs fighting? What do you think this dog is doing? And just paying attention to their body language as kids, I think is very important.
The term I use for it, and I know I didn't coin it, is clustering of signals, right? So yes. When you start taking body language cues from dogs and you focus too much on one of them, you want to look at them in collection, because if one of them can be an aberration for that dog, this dog just carries himself that way. This dog does that. This dog pilorex, he's excited, but he's not stressed, right, etc. And so there are places where you'll get in trouble if you try to overemphasize one. But if you see 4 classic signs of anxiety in a dog manifest simultaneously, you're like, okay, got a pretty good read. So you look for clusterings of those with body language stuff, and then be wrong sometimes. So that's the other thing.
Well, that takes ego, and I'm glad you said that, because I emphasize this on all these conversations where we talk with dog trainers, is one of the most powerful statements we can make as an individual. 3 words, you guys: I was wrong. and that takes us laying down the ego and being acceptance of always being a consummate learner, always enjoying the journey here, and not realizing that it is a destination. We are always, there's no finish line in this industry. We're always just taking it in. I look into the brain of the dog. We put that. Hello from New Zealand. Awesome.
Yeah,
we're going to be in New Zealand in October, huh?
Yep.
Next month. It's September 1st now, so next month, man, that's coming quick.
Fast. Excited about it. Really looking forward.
Do you like Lord of the Rings?
I do. Yeah. We plan on going to Habitual or whatever they got going there. This Shire.
Great analogy. Dogs are not like children. Intimate relationships. Yep, I do that. I use that analogy when people adopt a rescue dog, and I compare it to like a blind date, and then taking the blind date and moving too quick with that blind date. Guess what's going to happen? We're going to have some situations that are not going to be as we think it is. And that's a lot of times with rescue dogs. They don't allow that slow introduction into the home, allow the dog to see. They want to move really quick and love on this dog, and and smother them. And it's like, look, man, this is like a blind date. What would happen if you did that to your date? So the intimate relationship holds true in that scenario as well. In situations where a dog has repeatedly bitten people, including its owner and children, shows a consistent pattern of learned aggression, how should the topic of humane euthanasia be addressed? That's a tough one.
That's a really tough one. I did a discussion. Now I don't even remember who I did it for, but was it Canine Paradigm? I don't remember. Anyway, Denise Fenzi and I both were on a podcast together where we talked about, maybe it was the Dog Trainers podcast. Anyway, talking about behavioral euthanasia, and it's a super tricky subject, right? It's tricky because all the things we talked about before absolutely have to be in place for you to be able to recommend that. One, you have to know the dog really well. You have to have gone through enough interactions and work to recognize that, hey, this is not a fixable problem and this environment's unsafe for them. And also you need the trust of the person who you're going to suggest this to. They have to think that you have their best interest and the interest of the dog and the community at large at heart. So how long you have to develop trust with the person to be able to functionally do this. And for me, it's always, hey, can the dog be rehomed? Is there a home out there for the dog where the dog could be safe and live a reasonably full life? And if I don't think there's a place where the dog can go where a mistake isn't going to be catastrophic, and the dog is so managed that it doesn't have a meaningful life, then behavioral euthanasia should be considered. And there are cases in which it should be. And I'm also a little sensitive to the rescue kind of mentality that we have a little bit now in our community, that every dog is worthy of being saved, and the kind of no-kill idea that's allows rescues to get donations and things like that because they're sticking up for the ones that nobody wants, kind of thing. But the problem with that is there are going to be dogs in there that can't be safe, can't be fixable, can't have good lives, and they're using tons of resources where there are regular city shelters and animal control departments around the country putting down totally fine, wonderful pet dogs every day just because they don't have room. And then we're spending an inordinate amount of resource on a few very difficult dogs that aren't likely to be a good match for 99.9% of the homes that are out there. And so it's a super complicated topic. You can talk about it a lot. You need trust, you need compassion, and you need compassion for both dogs and the human community. And then it's a personal decision too. But that only person that can finally make that decision is the person, the dog's guardian, owner, whatever you call them at that point. So it's a challenge.
Luckily, it is a very small percentage of the cases that I deal with, but it is something that needs to remain on the table. And I agree with you, Michael. Like we have shelters that this dog has been in there for years and years and years. And it's eaten up an enormous amount of resources where there's a lot of dogs in the wing that can definitely fill that space. That would make a much better companion for somebody out there. Is there any ethical concern through taking someone's money and you don't think the job can be done? Of course.
Yes. So the way I work around that is like, I'm not going to go in and say on day one, oh, this dog can't be fixed. But I say up front, these are the difficulties that I'm seeing. This is, if we were going to train, this is how I'd approach it. But I can't promise that the dog is going to be fixed or whatever that's going to be. And so I think that's one of the big problems. Lots of dog trainers market themselves like, we can solve any problem, we can fix any kind of behavior issue in that sense. And so I'm very careful about what I promise up front. So I can plant the seed that I think might be difficult and these types of problems are difficult. So I'm not dishonest with them. I don't go in and take their money and start training like, oh yeah, sure, we can fix this. I'm letting them know, like, hey, this is not an easy fix, but if you're willing, we can give it a try. But be prepared that these are the difficulties I might see. And I try to forecast that for them up front. I try to be really straight up with people right off the bat without going in and saying like, oh, you should get rid of this dog on day one, because they're not going to listen to you. The problem with me doing that is, now I don't care about losing the client. I care about the fact that they're going to just blow you off. Then they're going to like, this guy didn't know me or the dog at all. And he came in and did a 15-minute or 20-minute or 30-minute evaluation and now said, I should get rid of my dog. It's not going to work for you very often. Right.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of dance around that a little bit at the beginning, but don't promise anything that you shouldn't promise, and don't act like, be straight up, right, in that.
Yeah, and have a good network too, especially new dog trainers. A lot of new dog trainers watch this, and get yourself a mentor, get yourself especially somebody that, if it is a case that may be above your head or you haven't worked with this behavior before, that you have somebody that maybe can help you or that you can refer that client to as well. And and making false promises is unethical, just like the appeal to emotion that we were talking about that rescues use for no kill. This is a logical fallacy, an appeal to emotion. And just like we're talking about the drive of emotion, the influence that has in dog training, it also has a huge influence in human behavior. Like people are 10 times more likely to buy based on emotion than they are on pure logic. So,
and the other thing we just talked about it a second ago is be prepared to be wrong. We were talking about it in relation to dog body language. But if I go in on day one and I go, oh, this is a bad match, I don't think this dog should be in this home, and I say that, I could also be wrong because I haven't entered into the process with them. And I've seen over the years many dogs who they fall in two categories: a dog you think is going to be really easy, and the dog turns out to be hard. And up front, you were like, "Oh, I got this, no problem." Oh man, that was not what I thought it was. And then vice versa, dogs you think are going to be horrifically difficult based on how they present originally, and you enter into the process, you get down the road, and you're like, "Oh, they got over that really fast. We got through it really easily." So experience helps you kind of predict that to some degree, but it's not an exact science. It's a living being, and you're taking a snapshot when you go in and just evaluate a dog in the beginning. First time I meet you, that's a tiny snapshot of a personality. It's trying to figure out what to Bill's analogy, trying to figure out somebody's whole personality on what their first blind date. You're not going to know all about them, and you're going to be wrong about certain things that haven't revealed themselves yet and all that. So be a little careful about snap judgments there in the beginning, and be prepared also to be wrong there.
Yeah, and know that you're working with the dog in front of you. You're not working with the dog that you've worked with before, or all these experiences. Right. Like you have baggage coming into this, and we need to consider that as well. That it's the dog right in front of you, and that's hard. But you need to let the previous experiences that you have go, and watch how it unfolds. Watch the truth of unfolding. Am I fashionably late? Yes, you are. Will this be safe for lady? Yep, it's going to be available on YouTube, you guys. That's Facebook starts to take down these videos, I guess. So, but watch it on YouTube. My Bow Wow Build channel on YouTube. And Michael, you're welcome to take or whatever this chat that we've had. And repurpose it for anything you like as well. Forever Michael Ellis student. He's literally the Helio Gracie, the jujitsu. She's a black belt jujitsu. There's a lot of jujitsu people in dog training. I find out, man. It's a pretty.
There are really. Yeah. There's a lot. Thank you, Laura. That's incredibly kind of you.
What do you think is most overlooked foundational skill that can make or break a dog's long-term success in obedience and behavior?
If I had to pick one, overlooked.
That's a good question.
So for me, if I take specific behaviors, then a recall is the most important thing for me. If I had to pick a single behavior that my dog had to have, it's a really good recall. And I could lump in with that because I chain them together. Handler focus, or the ability to hold the dog's attention, get them to come to you and to hold their attention. If I took it a concept thing, it's teaching the dog to learn, and teaching the dog two aspects of learning. Teaching a dog to learn that they have agency and control in getting things that they want through their behavior, and also teaching them that their behavior can also get them out of difficulty. And so there are structured lessons that we give that teach dogs both to work to shut off pressure and to work to access rewards. And both skills need to be introduced in the dog during foundation training. And if they have that, then all the behaviors fall into line, because you have their ability. They recognize that their behavior gets them things they want. And then we just set up the circumstances so they learn the behaviors that get those things that they want. And at the other end of the spectrum, they also have learned that their behavior can shut off or help them escape pressure as well. And they learn also to be able to maintain thoughtfulness and learn under stress. And if the dog has both of those skills, then I can teach them anything I want.
Well put, man. That's awesome. I'm going to have to teaching the dog to learn. That's so, I mean, thank you, Michael. That was great, dude. Let's see here. Thank you for the Q&A. Looking forward to going through the Snug Chronicles someday. What's Snug
Snug Chronicles. That's my video training journal for my young dog. This is my dog, the dog I was describing.
Okay.
His name's Snug, and as a part of my membership service, I'm uploading all of his training sessions into there, and they're all voiced over with what I was doing, what went right, what went wrong, all that kind of stuff. I think there's 200 videos in there right now, and I have 200 more to voice over at this stage. So
is it going to be on this one here, the Michael Ellis School? Is this where this? So,
yeah, if you go there and just hit the membership button at the top, then there,
okay,
go to membership, hit there, and that's the membership right there. And it's one of the categories in the membership. In addition to the recorded versions of a bunch of our past in-person classes, there's a whole library of webinars. There's a bunch of practical tutorials, a bunch of stuff in there.
Crocs, dude. Sorry, out of everything, I got to focus on the Crocs.
Yeah, I'm a Croc junkie.
Yeah, I do too, man. I love them. And then you don't have yours in four-wheel drive here. You got the straps up above, like.
Yeah, I wasn't doing anything real. This was that was in a competition, so I wasn't doing anything or running backwards or anything. But I'll put the things on. If you're gonna wear them in dog train and you have to run backwards or do things like that, it's better to put the straps on.
Yeah, four-wheel mode engaged. You know. And you guys, I put up a link in the comments here. You guys, Michael Ellis School. .com. Highly recommend this. And it's something too, like you get a little discount if you pay for the year price. You get a 10% discount, so keep that in mind. And you know, Kevin Lee lives right by you. You know,
hey.
Kevin? Yep, good to see you guys. I was just at the ICP. Michael, my local hero. Hello, guys. And Laura, how many other trainers have worked with it? Okay. I think that was the behavioral euthanasia. How many trainers have worked with this? Thanks, Bow Wow Bill, for organizing Michael interview. Got to go. Looking forward to watching this later. If you guys are watching this and you made it to the end here, make sure to type in where in the world you're watching this from, because I think it's so cool that we're worldwide, man, and vast majority of people watch after.
That is, you hear me as an old man rail against the internet all the time, but that is one of the beautiful things about it. People all over the world being able to network and communicate with each other and that kind of thing. It's really cool. It is exciting.
Have all the DVDs been so helpful? Yes, I know. Broad question. Cool. This was a question earlier. If you ain't crocking it, you ain't rocking it. Awesome.
Classic.
So yeah, we got Virginia people chiming in right now. Well, Michael, we've been chatting for a couple hours. Is there anything? I mean, let me put the sit, stay, learn up there as well, because you just did that.
Oh, yeah.
But, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd like to mention, or?
I don't think so. Like I kind of let these things have a life of their own. So you asked a lot of good questions. I thought our discussion covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, no, I'm perfectly content. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Why am I thinking? Oh, there it goes. I messes up from Sweden. We got Connecticut, Sweden. Okay. Keep leaving those comments, you guys. I'm going to leave you with one last question. There's a lot of new dog trainers. And if you had a chance to say something to your younger self or to the new dog trainers that are entering the industry now, what's one piece of advice you'd give them?
So the big thing that I would say is nothing is what you expect it to be. So what you envision dog training to be, what you envision a career in dog training to be, what you envision marriage, old age, youth, none of it turns out to be what you thought it was when you start. So maintain a kind of openness to allow it to be what it's going to be, and don't rush it. Don't wish your life away. Don't hope to be somewhere where now. Like, it's hard, and you're like, I want to be there now. Enjoy the step-by-step process of getting there, the ride, because that's where you're spending all your time. And when you get there, it's not going to be what you think it is. It's different than that. And so you have to have kind of found the joy in the process, for me. And so I would suggest that just don't be too inflexible about what you're expecting out of life. And dog training is a big part of that for me, certainly. But none of it turns out to be what you thought it would be. So it's all wonderful. It's fantastic, but it's going to be different than you think. So maintain your flexibility. Enjoy the ride.
Enjoy the ride. Don't forget to enjoy the ride, man. Well,
And
thank you,
remember
Mike. Oh,
why you were excited about it at the beginning.
say that again.
Always remember what got you excited about it in the beginning. Because when you make it a career, anything, when you turn it into a job, then you can get focused on other aspects of it and lose sight of the thing that brought it to you originally, that really made you love it and want to do it as a career. So be careful that you don't get bogged down in that stuff too. Always keep your foot on the part of it you love, finger on the part.
Yeah, and know that this is an industry rife with burnout, and get yourself a network of people that will motivate you, that you can learn from, and know. My saying is, your network is your net worth. Take time to learn, to work on your business, not just in your business, and reconfigure and restructure what you do, but always remember the why. That is the power of why we do what we do. And same thing with marriages, man. Always remember why, and remember, go back to that day where you saw your bride walking down the aisle, or your husband waiting there for you. As things get difficult, it's through these difficulties that strengthen us, and through the struggle that we grow. And so, but always remember the why. And
well said.
This is awesome, Michael. Let's say goodbye to everybody here. Thank you for watching, you guys.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, Bill, for having me on.
You bet. And I'll say goodbye to you in the studio.